First, let me say that I'm a big fan of Aron Ra's and have made many recommendations for people to see his YouTube work. I just want to make a few comments, hopefully constructive criticisms, on his talk here as it concerns atheism and feminism.
But what I didn't understand was when a woman could qualify for the work and show that she could really do it and was still prohibited from having the job. I was really surprised to find out that men or that women were not paid at the same rate as men, and I didn't understand why. One of the excuses that was given to me was that women didn't have to pay as much as men because they didn't have to buy their own dinner, they didn't have to pay for their own drinks, they didn't have to buy their own jewelry or clothing or pay for their own vacations, and sometimes even their rent was paid by someone else. The only advantage that women really had was that this was a time when women were the default winners of all child custody combat. If you couldn't prove that she was an unfit mother, she automatically wins. Now, this was a period of inequity that in Texas was only corrected in the last 10 or 15 years.
Of course, the discrimination against women was not justified in their wages, but let's not pretend that the only advantage that women had was in child custody. Now, I'm older than you, and I suppose conscription was not going on when you were younger, but I certainly watched at least one man get conscripted, sent to Vietnam, come back years behind his female counterparts, go to college, apply for a graduate assistantship, and get told that that assistantship was being reserved for a woman. They needed to hire more women. Let's not pretend conscription didn't exist. Let's not pretend affirmative action doesn't exist. And that's not the only advantage that women have. Even when I was young, some 10 years before you, women were beginning to be taught that they could be anything, go into any career. Boys growing up were being taught that they had to select a career. They had to earn the money. It wasn't an option for them. It was mandatory. And when it comes to child custody, you and I live in Texas where many years ago they passed a law requiring any man in a divorce settlement to pay child support for any child born to his wife while they were married, even if it wasn't his child. The law was written that you couldn't present evidence that it wasn't his child. This ostensibly was because they didn't want women's reputation being sullied by having claims that she bore the child from some other man. When DNA testing came along, there were reasonable men's rights advocates who said this should be changed, and many people thought, of course it should be changed. You don't have to sully her reputation, you just have to get a DNA test. If the child is not his, he shouldn't have to pay child support. But that law did not get changed, and the reason it didn't get changed, and the reason men who have proof that they are not the father of children that their wives have born are still required to pay child support for them, is because the feminists who just want equality insisted that the man has to pay child support even if he can prove he's not the father of a child that his wife bears during their marriage. So, no, custody cases were not then and are not now the only case of injustice against men. You list in this talk that you're giving here a number of differences of how boys and girls were treated, and it's not always to the advantage of the girl.
How could it be that we would have so many people in our own ranks, including women, who object to feminism? That word has cultural stigmas poisoning it every bit as much as atheist, and nobody should understand that better than atheists. A couple weeks ago on an atheist podcast, someone told me that the reason was there's so many different definitions, and that I'm using the wrong one. That just because you're not a feminist doesn't mean that you're a sexist. My friend D.P.R. Jones jumped on that comment, like the lawyer that he is, and pulled up a half a dozen different dictionaries, all of which gave the exact same one and only definition that I use. A feminist is one who advocates equal rights and treatment for women. That's it. That's the only definition there is or ever was. Although there is a colloquialism that feminism is the radical idea that women are people too.
If feminism really meant, in practice, treating women and men equally, there wouldn't be a controversy. And according to that colloquial definition, this man is a feminist.
Ted, it is about 2:30 in the afternoon. You are scheduled to be executed tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock if you don't receive another stay. What is going through your mind?
Rapist, serial killer, and feminist, according to that colloquial definition, Ted Bundy.
So it is nothing short of embarrassing for me as a man when men's rights activists chime in saying, equal rights for women? What about equal rights for men?
So, do feminists ever say anything that you find embarrassing?
What is it about the word equal that they don't understand?
I think it's the feminists who have the trouble understanding equal treatment, not the men's rights people.
Now, I've heard people object to feminism on the excuse that some feminists have gone too far. Whatever the hell that means.
Really, you don't have a clue as what they could possibly be talking about. Nothing. No ideas come to mind at all.
Let's just peel away the double standards. I think that's the best way to show appropriate respect for women.
And exactly when are the feminists going to put away the double standards?
The theists will put away whether they are Protestant, whether they're Mormon, whether they're Catholic, whether they're Muslim or Jewish or Hindu, and they will hold hands together against us while we eat our own over trivialities that have us basically like two sheep butting heads, surrounded by a sea of hungry wolves. We really need to unify. We need to put this down. We need to stop arguing about these types of trivialities and realize we have a common enemy that is using that against us, and they already have all the power and all the money in it that they need to keep that power, and that anything we might do to affect political change and better this planet is only going to be done by working together and putting these differences aside.
Hear, hear.
And who exactly do you think is creating these divisions?
As the atheism movement grows, we are going to be more inclusive of demographics we don't agree with on every level. I mean, come on, we already have libertarians. We put up with them. We need to be accepting of the fact that not everybody's going to agree with us on every single point, and it doesn't matter.
So could you mention that to your Atheism Plus friends who are trying to purge everyone out of the atheist movement who don't agree with them?
The religious people only agree on two things. One, they will believe in their mystic woo because they want to, regardless what the facts are, and that they can use other theists to help them with that. And the second thing that they agree on is that we are the enemy more so than each other. And we need to realize how overwhelmed and outnumbered we are and how ineffective we will be if we keep bitching at each other about ourselves, fighting amongst ourselves over every little thing we disagree on. Put it aside.
So when are you going to start that?
Yes.
The best response is to be running against other atheists on Facebook who are clearly misogynist assholes.
I don't want to repeat myself in this speech, but it really is as simple as I laid it out to be. Okay, if you're saying that there should be different rules applied or different behaviors imposed, that women will reduce their chances of rape if they act more like the women in Saudi Arabia do, there's a contradiction there.
Nobody is saying that. And by putting words like that into other people's mouths, you are contributing to the divisions that you say that you want to stop.
There's a contradiction there.